What's up everyone and welcome to part 2 of the Draft Dynasty final ranking. If you haven't watched the first part of the ranking, I would suggest pressing pause right now. Go back, watch the first one, and go back to this one. If you've watched the first part, welcome back. I'm glad you liked the first part and you're still back for more. Before I start going into the picks and the ranking, I just want to say that in this range, the players are pretty close, so I wouldn't mind moving a few positions each player. There's not a huge gap that's separating every player in this range, and for that reason, I think this is going to be the most interesting part of the draft, the middle of the first round, because the top 10 is pretty easy. I don't think you can make many mistakes in the top 10, but in this specific part of the draft, there's not going to be a clear-cut pick. It's not going to be easy, and mistakes are going to be made, I think. So at number 20, you probably guessed already, I have Mr. Hendrix Lapierre, and this is a player that's going to be really tricky to evaluate for some teams because he was injured, but it's not only the injuries, it's also the fact that early on in the year, he was a beast at the Alenka Gretzky, one of the best players from Team Canada. I even think he outplayed Quinton Byfield. Him and Perreault were clearly the two best players from Team Canada. And after that, in league play, he was not really good at all. So it's hard to say which one he is really. Did he just play his best hockey in his life at the Alenka Gretzky and he's not really an elite player? Or maybe he is somewhere in the middle. There is one thing for sure though about his game is that he can flat out pass the puck. He's an elite playmaker, and this year is a very good year for playmaker. There's a lot of good one, and he's the kind of player that doesn't even need to try, and he's gonna find everyone on the ice. You know where everyone is. The big downside with him is gonna be his lack of scoring abilities and also his shot. His shot is very weak. I saw him recently though, and it seems like he improved his shot a little bit, but still, he's never gonna be a guy that's gonna score a ton of goals. You're gonna need to surround him with some finisher and guy that like to shoot the puck. He's also looking much bigger on the ice. I think he gained at least 20 pounds, so he's a guy that clearly is taking this seriously. You know, he worked a lot during the COVID break, and he's got a great head on his shoulder, a great hockey IQ. So I think that makes him a bit less risky, the fact that he's very smart, work hard off the ice, and also thinks the game at a very deep level. At number 19, I have center Greig, and this is a player really annoying to play against, and this is the type of player that I like. And he is more of a long-term project. If you look at his body type, he's not big at all, pretty small, and he plays a pretty physical type of game. So he's gonna need to bulk up, gain some weight. He's also on the younger side, and he's a player that I think a lot of people are making a mistake. He's ranked in the second round and even in third round on some ranking. And the thing is, if you focus too much on what he is currently, of course you're gonna make a mistake, because it doesn't even matter how good he is right now and any other player really, because in reality, 98% of the players are not even gonna play in the NHL until 2 or 3 years. So the only important thing is how good he's gonna be in 2 or 3 years. The final product is really what matters, and of course it's not that easy to project that. Otherwise everyone would make the perfect draft pick every time, and it's not that easy. But I'm just gonna bet that he's gonna catch up on other players that are currently better than him. He's gonna catch them in year 2, 3, 4. In terms of playstyle, I think he's gonna be a all-around player. He's gonna be able to do a little bit of everything. Play defensively, penalty killing, power play physical when he needs to. He's gonna be able to do a bit of everything. More of a third line player, I would say. At number 18, I have Dawson Mercer, and this guy is the ultimate safe pick. He played a little bit at center earlier in the year, but I think he's really a right winger at the next level. And like with Greig, he's super well rounded, so he can do a little bit of everything. Great stick handling, play super well defensively, penalty killing. He doesn't make many mistakes on the eye, and I think he's one of the players that is the most NHL ready in that range. I think 1 or 2 years and he's going to be able to jump in the NHL. So if, let's say, a team needs immediate help, he could be an interesting candidate. He was slightly higher than that on my board earlier in the year. One of the reasons why I decided to slide him down just a little bit is I think after the World Junior, he started to show sign of fatigue a little bit. So I'm slightly worried that he's going to be able to handle the workload in the NHL. Another reason would be that earlier in the year, he was crushing it in Drummondville, and one of the reasons I think is because they have really good coaching down there, and they knew how to use him effectively, and this is maybe why he had a bit inflated stat. The final reason why I decided to drop him down a little bit would be the lack of upside. I think it's just missing a little bit of upside for me to have him a bit higher than that, because I think he might be capped at around 40-50 points in the NHL, and it's hard for me to justify having him much higher than that if I think this is his cap in terms terms of point production. At number 17, I have Mr. Tristen Robins, and at 17, it might be a little bit of an overkill in terms of ranking. I know realistically he's probably going to be drafted way lower than that. I think he's going to be a right winger at the next level, even though he did really well at center toward the end of the year. And this is a player that was one of the most valuable player to his team. Was playing with Saskatoon, not a really good team, and they were playing in an extremely tough division, and a lot of games they won because of him. He was carrying the load, and like I said in my previous video, I give a lot of point to the player that are playing to win on a consistent basis. So he's a guy that never quits, even though he played in a lot of very tough physical game. He's just very consistent. He always keeps on going, never stop, never cheat on the ice, and he also has the trifecta, like I said with Rachevsky earlier. I think he's an elite shooter, elite playmaker, and elite stick handler. So this is what I'm looking for. At number 16, I have Anton Lundell, and a few of you might think this is a bit controversial because a lot of people are higher than that on him, but get ready because I have a few other spicy hot take like that. I think Lundell is one of the most NHL ready player in this draft. He could step in the NHL next year without a problem, I think. Defensively, he is without a doubt one of the best in the draft. He also brings quite a bit of size and physicality. My only problem with him would be similar to Mercer. I think his ceiling is a bit lower. I think his upside might be capped at around 50 points in the NHL. My other concern would be the skating, and more specifically the agility and the explosion, because the top speed is pretty good, but he's going to need to work a lot on his agility and his edges. In the end, I think he's going to be a pretty safe pick, especially if he's elite defensively and he's able to put in 40-50 points. A lot of teams would pay a pretty high price to get a center like that. At number 15, I have Jacob Perreault, and you're going to start to see a trend now. We're shifting from safe player to a bit more risky, but we are swinging for the high upside right now. If we take a look at the offensive tool of Jacob Perreault, it's really night and day compared to Anton Lundell. Jacob Perreault is elite at pretty much everything. His shot especially, I know a lot of people are talking about the shot of Jack Quinn and also Alexander Holtz, but Jacob Perreault's shot is really solid, and I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up being a 35 goal scorer in the NHL, maybe 40 assists, so 70-75 points. That's how high I think his ceiling is. The problem is I'm not sure he's going to reach that ceiling. He's a bit more risky, like I said earlier. There's also some concern with his consistency. He's not the most intense guy. Some night he was not trying that hard defensively. He's not a player that is trying to win each and every single game, so that's a little bit worrying for me. But like I said in the previous video, guys with that type of upside, 35 goal plus, there's not a million to choose from, so you got to take the good and the bads. And if he was super intense, super consistent, he probably would be a top 10 pick. So if he's able to gain some maturity, fix those problems of consistency, work ethic, you just got yourself a steal right there. At number 14, we have right winger Noel Gunler, and this is one of the purest goal scorer in this draft. And similar to Jacob Perreault, he's a guy with pretty high upside and somewhat risky. The main reason why he's a risky pick for me would be the fact that he's unidimensional. So he's a pure sniper, but in terms of puck skill, stick handling, playmaking, that's pretty average for a guy really high in the draft. So I see him a little bit like a guy like Brock Besser, a guy like Patrick Laine. So the type of player that he absolutely need to score, otherwise he's not super helpful to the team. So he's not really the type of player that I really like. I usually like players that are a bit more complete, easy to coach, more consistent. But in the end, if he scores 40 goals, there's a lot of teams that are going to line up to pick him up, because 40 goal scorer are not that easy to come by. So I'm going to keep the same approach and focus a lot on the ceiling of the player, try to aim for higher upside type of player. I think for Gunler to work in the NHL, he's going to need to be surrounded by the right type of player. So I'm thinking maybe a center, more of a playmaker, or maybe another winger that's more solid defensively. You kind of need to build around him. A good team that would fit well for him, I think, is Edmonton. Along with a guy like McDavid, this guy is going to score a gazillion amount of goal. He could also be a good fit with the Devils if he starts slipping in the draft at 18 or 20. I think they have 2 picks, the Devils. So he would fit well with a guy like Jack Hughes, who's a good speedster, puck distributor. Gunler would be able to finish his plays. At number 13, I have Kaiden Guhle, and there's not a lot of good defensemen this year. It's a poor year for the defensemen, but he's one that I really like. The main selling point for Guhle are the size. He's pretty tall, he's got a long reach, he skates really well, he's one of the best in the draft defensively, he's got a lot of upside on that side. He's also playing a pretty physical, in-your-face type of game. On top of that, he brings a lot of leadership to the table, pretty consistent. He still has a couple of years to grow. I don't think we are close to the final product. He just keeps on getting better and better. He's starting to add a little bit of offense. Earlier last year, I thought he was not good enough offensively, but he's slowly starting to prove me wrong, especially his shot on the power play. He's got an excellent one-timer, and it's becoming his number one weapon to produce offense. In terms of stick handling, he's not the type of guy a la McCarr that's gonna dribble past 2 or 3 guys. Also, he's not the best playmaker in the world. He usually keeps things pretty simple, but all in all, he's a guy that's gonna log a ton of minutes because he can do it all. 5-on-5, penalty killing, power play. So there's a lot of things that he's doing that are contributing to winning games, and I think there's a lot of teams that would want a number 3 defenseman that is able to play a ton of ice time, maybe chip in 35-40 point tops a year, but his main value is going to come from playing defensively against the other team best player, playing physical, and also the intangible, the leadership, the character. This guy is a leader. He's probably going to have a letter on his jersey in the NHL. At number 12, I have right winger Lucas Raymond, and I'm guessing a lot of you right now are having a heart attack because he's ranked much higher on most boards. One of my main goals this year was to put together a ranking and don't let myself be influenced by the general public, the general opinion, and it's really hard to do because, you know, when everyone thinks a certain guy should go top 10, it's hard to go against that. One of the main reasons why I'm a little bit lower on him than most, it would be the game that I watched when he was playing in junior under 20 team. There's a lot of games that he simply quit. He stopped trying, and he looked like a guy that didn't want to be there, and probably he was mad. I'm not sure if it was the case, but there's a lot of games where he quit, was not trying hard enough, and that really annoyed me. Also, earlier in the year, I thought he would be a center at the next level. Now that I've seen more, I think he's definitely not going to be a center. I think he's more likely to be a right winger. On top of that, I feel like he did not progress at the rate I was looking for. Maybe my expectations were too high for him, but I felt like guys like Alexander Holtz or even Noel Gunler adapt their game better at the SHL level, the pro level in Sweden, and they were improving at a faster rate than Raymond was improving. He's also shown a little bit of difficulty adapting to the physicality of the game in the SHL, so it's definitely something to keep in mind because the guy in the NHL are bigger, stronger, faster, and the ice is smaller, so it might be problematic for him physically. I still think he's got a lot of upside. The thing I like the most about his game would be his agility. He's a dynamic player, good stick handling, but on top of that, it's the playmaking that I like the most. And just a little disclaimer, I did not get the chance to watch the preseason game where he scored a couple of goals a few weeks ago, and I really wish I would be able to see how well he developed since the break. At number 11, I have Lucas Raquel, and this might be an even bigger surprise than Lucas Raymond, so there's definitely a lot of hot take on this video, so please be gentle in the comment, don't attack me too much. And again, this is a pick that is all about the progression and the projection that you make about a player. He is not currently the 11th best player in this draft, but I'm hoping that in 3-4 years, kind of similar to Ridley Greig, I'm hoping that what we're seeing right now is only the tip of the iceberg, and there's a lot more room to develop as a player. In terms of development curve, I think it's going to be along the lines of a guy like Jesperi Kotkaniemi. He's going to take maybe some time because he's going to need to have that strength, the physicality to be able to play his game, because he's a guy that is always at the right place. He always seems to have the instinct to be at the right time, right place. He's really strong along the boards. He's really good in front of the net. So the size is really going to be important for his game. In terms of ceiling and projection, I do not think he's going to be a guy that's going to put up 100 point, 80 point. I think he's going to be more around 65, 70 point a year, but he's a player that's going to be so much more than just point. He's going to be very helpful and more than just the point total. So even though the player before had a higher ceiling in terms of point production, I'm putting Raquel ahead of them just because I think he is more likely to reach that ceiling. So that's one thing. The other reason would be that I think he's a more complete player and there's less red flags in his game. So this is it for this episode. Stay tuned for the final top 10. I should be able to come with this video pretty soon. As always, please drop a like if you enjoyed the video, even if you don't agree with all the picks. I put a lot of time and effort into the channel. The content is free for you guys, so please help a brother out. Smash that like button and see you on the final top 10. Bye.